Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. So today I have a pretty neat product from my friends over at BetaFPV, and it's this. This is the BetaFPV LiteRadio 2 SE. It looks an awful lot like the original Beta LiteRadio 2, but there are some major differences. From the outside, it looks pretty much identical. You can't tell a difference. The feel's the same, the look's the same, the switches are the same. But when you start getting around to like the bottom, you can see that there are some differences. The Beta LiteRadio 2 SE has a USB-C port, and this one has an old micro USB on the underside of it. And that's pretty much where the differences stop on the outside. But when you pop open the back, you notice they didn't include a battery. But the old one came with a 2S battery. Or did it? They did. Battery has changed. The battery is now internal to the radio rather than this removable battery. So is having that internal battery a good idea or not? Well, according to BetaFPV, this one will net you about 10 hours of runtime, whereas this one was barely 3. Also, there's been a change to the RF power. The old radio was 80 milliwatts output power. The new one is 100 milliwatts output power. It's not a huge difference, but it is a notable difference in the output power. Again, there are 2 models of this radio, one for FrSky protocol and the other one for Bayang. Just be very careful when you're ordering this, or if you're ordering a RTF kit that comes with one of these radios, make sure it doesn't come with the Bayang protocol. Otherwise, you're going to be limited to a very select few quads, as opposed to if you get one with the FrSky protocol, you're going to be able to run most D8, D16 enabled FrSky products. And let's face it, there are way more of those on the market in this space of FPV flying than Bayang. Walking around the radio, switches are the same. You have two position switches, you have 2 3-position switches. This one comes setup mode 2, that's throttle on the left and pitch and roll on the right. On the back, same buttons. You have a setup and a bind button. Not a whole lot of changes there, but with the 2 in hand, there is a big difference in the weight. Let's get over on the scale and see what the difference is. Over on the scale, this is the Beta LiteRadio 2 SE. It's clocking at 173 grams. And here is the Beta LiteRadio 2, the original version, and we're looking at 227 grams. That's a pretty big difference in weight, and it's also going to change the way the radio feels in your hand. I personally would prefer a little bit heavier of a radio, but from my previous reviews and other ones out there, you know that the added weight for the original LiteRadio 2 was basically just a bunch of glued-in weights in the handles. So let's get this open and take a look. We'll see that in here, the little 1S LiPo is attached to the main board by a small JST connector. And there is the original LiteRadio 2 there. Still the same PCB style antenna stuck here in the top of the radio. But the big difference you're going to see is on the back shells. This is the original LiteRadio 2 and this is the SE. This radio has about 40 grams worth of weights glued into the handle, and this one doesn't. And it does really change the way this feels. I mean, this thing is very hefty, and this feels like, well, feels like light plastic. It's got a 1S LiPo, 1000 milliamps, so 1S LiPo, kind of just double-sided taped into the handle area here. This does leave a lot of room to maybe add a 18500 cell on each side. So this would be very easy to add more power to it if you really needed it. But with a rated runtime of about 8 hours, I don't know if you'd really need it. The radio will charge while being powered by USB-C. So if for some reason you did get this out and the battery power was low and you wanted to go fly, you could plug it into a little power bank and fly it just being tethered to yourself. And it will charge the pack and operate the radio at the same time. This does double as a controller for playing flight simulators. Pretty simple. Turn it on, plug it in your computer, and at least for me on a Windows machine, it automatically recognized it, and it was very easy to set up in just about any simulator I tried. As far as the gimbal construction goes, it's basically the same as what we had on the original Beta LiteRadio 2. So there are a few big differences about this radio. Other than just the hardware side of it, it no longer runs OpenTX. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, in my opinion, it's probably a good thing. Without a graphical readout on the front of it, and having to use a special baked version of OpenTX just for this radio, doing things like setting up models and gimbal calibration was really, really difficult through OpenTX, especially without that display, and plus you'll then need to have the knowledge of how to use OpenTX Companion to set this up. Whereas now it doesn't run OpenTX, but all the switches are mapped, all the sticks are mapped, and they did make the one big issue that we had with the original LiteRadio 2 a lot easier, is it has a built-in gimbal stick calibration procedure. It's very simple, it's clearly outlined in the manual. Turn it on, hit a button, wait for some beeps, move your sticks, and you're pretty much good to go. If you'd like a video showing how to calibrate the gimbal sticks on this radio, please let me know in the comment section down below, and I might make one for you guys. But following the directions, they're pretty easy to figure out. Same thing with switching between FrSky modes, between D8 and D16. This will bind to just about any FrSky receiver that is ACC-ST compatible. It will not work with access receivers. Keep that in mind when you're purchasing this, if you are looking to use it for something that's not a micro bind and fly. It will bind to older D16 receivers like the XM Plus, the XM, the RXSR, the old XSRs, and pretty much all of the SPI-based flight controllers like what you would find from Happy Model, BetaFPV, and the sorts, where the receiver's built into the flight controller. Keep in mind though, if you get a receiver, say a XM Plus, and the bag says 2.1.0 on it, that means it has ACST 2.0 on it, and this will not bind to it. You'll have to downgrade the firmware on your FrSky receiver to make it work with this. BetaFPV does say that this thing will have firmware, the ability to have firmware updates. What that means, I'm not really sure yet. We'll know more in the future as this product is developed, and just like the old radio, it does have a trainer port on it, so you can buddy box this with a friend's radio. And the protocols that this does support, it would be FrSky D16 FCC and D16 LBT. D8, note there is no D8 LBT, so if you're using this in a LBT area, say like in the EU for D8, that's technically not legal. It also does Futaba S, FHSS, and Bayang, if you bought the Bayang radio. So one of the big issues I had with the original Beta LiteRadio is it had an extremely high standby power draw at 8 milliamps. This new radio draws 1 microamp. So you don't really have to worry about it dying in its standby mode, whereas this radio died pretty quickly. It took about 400 hours of standby time for it to completely drain a LiPo. This one, it's gonna take forever to do that, so not something you have to worry about anymore. While it's running, this draws 133 milliamps, and it has an alarm that goes off when the voltage drops below 3.2 volts. But it will not stop the radio operation until the battery is completely dead. And I found that drawing it down below 3 volts, the alarm actually would stop. And this thing would run right up to the point where it had about 1 volt going to it. And it would still run, and it still communicated with a quad I had bound to it very closely. As far as out at distance, who knows? I'm sure the output power of the RF amplifier will drop as voltage drops. But big improvement over the original LiteRadio 2. So the question is, should you buy this radio? Well, if you're in the market for a D8 radio, which, as we all know, FrSky is pretty much killing off the D8 protocol, and for good reason. D8 is not a great protocol, but it's everywhere and everybody's using it, and it's kind of the easy go-to for most manufacturers. This radio clocks in at roughly $40, and that's a pretty compelling price, especially since it does D8, D16, Futaba, and Bayang, but we're not too concerned about Bayang. It's a pretty compelling price. There are other small form factor radios like this on the market that have more features to them, but they all command a higher price. One of the things I noticed about this radio when I got it is it has that kind of soft touch feel to it, but not quite, and it is kind of slick in the hands. There's no room for a lanyard strap. You could design and 3D print something for it, but I found the best solution for the grip on the Beta LiteRadio is to put a set of radio grips on it, like these ones here in BMO blue. Pretty easy application. There you go. A nice custom little addition to your Beta LiteRadio 2 SE. Adds an awful lot of grip and control over the radio. This radio is a little lighter than the old one, so just something to let you stand out from the crowd. For the price of $40, I think this is actually a very compelling purchase, especially if it's going to be like a secondary radio, maybe just for your micro rigs, or if you're going to go out and do a quick rip and dip, maybe someplace where you might get your gear taken away from you. I'd rather lose a $40 radio than, you know, a much more expensive radio. Make sure that if this is going to be your only radio, you do look at what the limitations are. This is actually a very good radio. The old one was a good radio too. All right, folks, so that was my review of the Beta LiteRadio 2 SE. Again, this was sent to me by BetaFPV for review. These opinions are mine and mine alone. If you're interested in everything I'm doing, go to tweetfpv.com. All my links to products that I use are in there and in the video description. If you click those links, it would greatly help me out. All right, folks, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking us out. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. And as always, stay safe.